Bring It In is where sports meets a lot of things. Business or politics, pop culture or social issues with insight, nuance, and a bit of humor. We want to be your go-to for the most important sports conversations on the field and off it. And in this episode, we'll examine the state of Canadian basketball and whether the men's national team can finally break a 24-year Olympic drought. If you're a Canadian sports journalist who covers or even dabbles in basketball, you can almost circle the date on your calendar each fall. Mid-October, just before the NBA season tips off, you'll receive a news release from the league celebrating a record number of Canadian players on opening day rosters. 17 of them 2 years ago, 20 last season, and this year, 22 Canadian players began the season on NBA rosters. That figure makes Canada the world's second biggest source of NBA talent, and we're not talking journeymen scooping up garbage time minutes. We're talking players like Andrew Wiggins starting 73 games for the Golden State Warriors on the way to an NBA championship last season, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who, as of this recording, ranked 5th in the league in scoring average. The country of James Naismith's birth has finally, firmly established itself as a basketball power, except Canada's men's national team has not qualified for the Olympics since the 2000 games in Australia, when RJ Barrett was 3 months old and his dad, Rowan Barrett, was teaming up with Steve Nash to lead Canada to the quarterfinals. So the logical question is this: how can Canada be the second most fruitful hoops nation on the planet and be the country whose men's teams can't get over the Olympic hump? Can't be both, not indefinitely. So what gives? Because something's gonna have to give, right? In this episode of Bring It In, we'll explore Canada's growing presence in the NBA and whether 2024 will be the year that the men's national team can turn all of that NBA talent into Olympic success. But first, let's look at how we got here.
The new iteration of the Canadian men's basketball team checks all the boxes of what an Olympic caliber basketball team should look like. With NBA starters, first-round draft picks, and an NBA championship winning coach in Nick Nurse, yet there have been some struggles to qualify for the Olympics. The most recent disappointment came in 2021 when Canada faced the Czech Republic in the semifinals of an Olympic qualification play-in tournament. The winner would go on to face Greece in the final with one Olympic spot on the line. After trailing for most of the game, Canada made a dramatic comeback in the final minutes, capped off by an Andrew Wiggins bucket that forced the game into overtime.
And a steal! Wiggins! Oh! Unbelievable shot by Wiggins to tie it!
But with 1.8 seconds left in OT, Thomas Satoransky sunk the game-winning shot for the Czechs.
Dort stays in front of him. Forces a tough one, and it goes!
Shattering Canada's dreams of an Olympic qualification. And with that loss, another disappointment for the Canadian men's basketball program. But from there, attention quickly turned toward the next Olympic cycle, Paris 2024, and with it, new hope that next time might be different. This summer, the Canadian men's team will compete in the FIBA Basketball World Cup in the Philippines. The top 2 finishers from the Americas will qualify for the Paris Olympics. The goal of the World Cup isn't just to compete, but to win. The 2023 edition will feature NBA stars like Jamal Murray of the Denver Nuggets and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander of the Oklahoma City Thunder. They're among 14 players who have made 3-year commitments to the program. And this group seems poised to bring the men's national team back to the Olympics after 24 years.
According to his job description, Rowan Barrett's role as general manager of Canada's men's national team involves advancing the squad's use of analytics, as well as defining their strategy and style of play. But it goes a lot deeper than that, like creating the continuity that allows NBA standouts to play well together and constructing a top-to-bottom culture that socializes elite players of all ages to make playing internationally a goal and not just an off-season chore. Barrett says years of steady effort are finally paying dividends, and he took some time to explain to me how it should all culminate in a spot in the Paris Olympics next summer. Rowan Barrett, general manager of Canada's men's national team. Big World Cup this summer with some Olympic berths at stake. What are your goals for your squad this summer?
For us, I think anytime you're entering a competition, you're thinking about winning. Or why are you doing it? I think our focus is there. But, coming out of this summer, our number one focus is to qualify for the Olympics, right? And so, that's our goal, for this summer, and we're going to get after it.
Right, and just refresh our audience, because if you like looking at it on a Wikipedia page or on a FIBA page, it can get pretty opaque. Remind our audience what Canada has to do to qualify for the Olympics.
So at the World Cup, the top two teams from our zone, the Americas, which is North America, South America, the teams that have qualified, the 7 teams that have qualified to go to the World Cup, the top 2 placing teams from our zone will qualify for the Olympics. So if one team was first or second and another team was 5th or even 7th, but those were the top 2 placing teams from our zone, they would both go to the Olympics. So you don't have to reach the podium, though clearly that's our goal. You don't have to reach the podium necessarily to qualify, but that's kind of where our sights are set. But the top 2 from our zone, and then if you do not qualify straight on, then you have the Olympic qualifying tournaments in the Olympic year, of which there'll be 3 of them set up in different parts of the earth. And the winners of each of those 3 or 4 qualifying tournaments, the winners of those tournaments will go in to the Olympics.
You yourself have played in the Olympics. You played the last time Canada played in the Olympics. And for the younger folks in the audience, Google it. 13 points a game alongside Steve Nash. Made it to the quarterfinals. But back when you did that, there were a handful of Canadians in the NBA, but Canada was in the Olympics. Now we have a critical mass of Canadians in the NBA, but this long Olympic absence. What do you think accounts for that gap that is developed?
At that time, when you talk about growth and development of our teams and our players all across the country, we were still kind of growing. We were still kind of growing, and I think a lot of the resources, as you know, sometimes our national sporting organizations, especially at that time, were a little bit underfunded. Like, for example, now we have a U16 team, a U17 team, a U18 team, a U19. Back when we were playing, we just had a U19 team. So what you've seen now over the last 10 years, with the work happening with the clubs, the work happening with the provincial territorial service organizations, everybody working together, pushing the talent. We're seeing less athletes falling between the cracks. And now all of a sudden, 10 years on from that, we're number 2 in producing NBA players in the world.
So much of international success obviously depends on having the talent, but how much of it depends on having that NBA level elite talent, and how much of it depends on those people's ability to adjust to the FIBA style of play?
Your best team might not have all NBA players, right? Like you don't win with an all-star team. You win with a team, right? Somebody that's willing to muck it up under the boards, somebody that's willing to set a hard screen, somebody that's willing to step up and take the shots, somebody that's willing to get down and play defense and get dirty, like you need kind of all of these things all together. And then obviously you need to know how to play FIBA. And that's why we needed a commitment. That's why we needed players that were going to stay for multiple years within our system prior to getting to an Olympics. You need them consistently there. That's a great question, because the FIBA game is very different than the NBA game. It's a different game. But when you go back and look at the teams that are winning the World Championships and the Olympics, the ones that are in the top 3, they are laden by NBA players. I don't know that there's any championship that's been won in the last 10 years that didn't have, some combination of NBA players on it.
Last question for you. Best case scenario, what happens this summer in the Philippines at the World Cup and next summer in Paris?
Yeah, I think the best scenario the number one scenario for us is qualifying. Like, that's the number one thing. We don't want to go into a qualifier the following year if we don't have to. We want to be able to qualify straight on and then be able to effectively plan, going into an Olympic year. Look, if you have to go to a qualifier, you do, but that's not really in our language right now. It's about qualifying straight on and then making that plan going right into the Olympics.
Okay, perfect. Rowan Barrett, thanks for taking the time. And for the young people watching this, pre-internet era, this man is a Toronto high school basketball legend. If it's not on the internet, go to your local library, microfilm, look it up. Those old David Grossman articles from the Star. This is the man. Rowan Barrett, thanks for taking the time to be with us.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Chris Boucher of the Toronto Raptors might be the last of his kind, an NBA player who learned the game not on travel teams but in city parks playing pickup ball in his native Montreal. We caught up with him here in Toronto, but he talked to us about how his hometown made him the player he is today. So Chris Boucher, the bio says you are from the University of Oregon, but the people that know you got your start in Montreal.
Yeah.
Talk to us for a minute about how important that was, like those foundational years in Montreal, to making you the basketball player that you are right now?
I mean, I had so much history from Montreal. Just, the grind that I did to survive over there and living. I mean, obviously we didn't have money and all that, my family and all. So it was a lot of, trying to figure it out at a young age, trying to figure out how to, be successful or find an income and all. And all those qualities that I learned from that game, I brought it back to the game of basketball. I felt like I knew that it wasn't going to be easy, and I had to work hard for everything that I have. And I feel like it's a culture that Montreal brought to a lot of us. If you see Lou Gantz, Ben, we all feel like we're playing with like an anger, a dog in us, like trying to prove ourselves, and also put Montreal on the map.
What is easy to forget, and if people have seen the documentary about your life, they're reminded of it, is that you got kind of a late start in organized basketball, but you had played a lot of pickup ball. So what was that like for you as a teenager, going from playing a lot of pickup ball to organized, structured basketball with like a roadmap to the future?
I mean, I was so used to play free basketball, and you shoot the ball when you want to shoot it, whatever, and there's no time, whatever. Whoever gets the 9, really, you win the game, So when I got to the, structured basketball, started going to JUCOs and university, that's when I realized, like, okay, basketball is bigger than just a little game that you play with your friends. Like, there's rules, there's different talent, different things that you can bring to the game, and you got to stick to your role, because if you don't end up doing what the team wants you to do, you might be out.
Right, so for you, when you got to Oregon, as the Canadian, as the guy that played a couple JUCOs, but you've been around enough high-level basketball to have seen that, like, a lot of these players grow up playing together on the AAU circuit from the time they're in middle school. And then here you came from another country, but also not from that AAU circuit necessarily. So what was that adjustment like for you, getting on the court against these elite players who've been playing with and against each other for a long time?
I mean, it was nerve-wracking. It was definitely, like, scary at first, because I was like, what if I'm not ready? What if, like, I'm the best, but at the level that I am? So, like, I was like, okay, maybe I'm one of the best in Montreal at that time. But it doesn't mean like you go to a USA and you play against guys like AAU that played basketball their whole life. It was definitely scary, but I think what helped me is that I had another Canadian on that team, Dylan Brooks.
Yep.
He was there with me. I had Dylan Ennis, another Canadian. So they took me under their wing, and like it was easier to move around, do things, go to workout. I was always around them, and they liked basketball, so they made it a little easier than it would be for anybody else.
But you said you thought of yourself as one of the best in Montreal.
Yeah.
How good, how thriving, how dynamic, how vibrant is the basketball scene in Montreal? Or was it when you were growing up, and how is it right now?
No, it's a lot bigger now. I mean, during the time when I started, I think we just had Joel Anthony and Samuel DeLambert. So it was kind of like, we knew we had talent, but we were never able to get out of the country and play somewhere else. We were never able to make a name for young guys. Like those guys made it, and like they showed us that it was possible. But like the resource, the checks, the salaries are not the same anymore. Where you feel like when you make it, you can help so many people and show the light to so many people. So when I made it, I felt like I was like, okay, well, you know what, I could be one of the best to do it. And then after that, Lou Gantz came in, and then Ben came in, and like now we got so many young guys that are coming in that I'm like, well, you know what, like. We came a long way. At the end of the day, like I know the scenery of basketball before wasn't like it was now, and when we won a championship, it definitely helped. I think it helped the whole Canada country. Winning a championship made it people really like, basketball could be something we do. But during that time, it was really hard.
And so as of right now, you're not in the national team program, but you have been in the past. What experiences did you gain playing with the national team at different age group levels that you bring to bear in the NBA right now?
I mean, I was playing with grown men, so like, made me definitely realize that it's not a little game and kind of get a little flash of the NBA and what I had to expect. And like I said, I was playing for my country, so I was getting the best of both worlds, honestly. And you know, and especially now, I mean, the more you realize, the more you see that it's at a point where we can have 20 players on the team. You know, so because we got so many guys in the NBA now, so and really good guys. So we're coming a long way, and it's amazing to see.
And what's it like adjusting to playing with the wide lane and the different shot clock and the different three-point line and the different time allocation, the 4 quarters instead of, the 4 10-minute quarters instead of 12 minutes?
I think the only thing that bothered me was the ball. I think the ball is different compared to...
How is the ball different? Explain. Because a viewer would never suspect this,
I mean, the FIBA ball feels a little different in your hand. I don't know if it's more... I mean, the Wilson and all, they're more like... I don't know, the texture of the ball is different. The FIBA is a little... When you play with it, it feels like the Wilson, the ball that I used to play in college, they kind of feel that way. So the NBA ball is completely different. I'd say that's one thing I changed, but beside that, I mean, I think the FIBA rules are really, they're amazing to me. The fact that you could, if the ball is still on the rim, you could block it out of there and all that, I feel like there's some advantage in there.
So you tell me, how far do you think Team Canada can go in the FIBA World Cup this summer?
With the way I'm seeing Shea play and the guys that like the Jamal, the Dylan, Olenek, all these guys, RJ. I mean, I feel like we could beat anybody at this point. If it comes to push and shove and like, you know, like important team, I think Canada could hang with anybody. To be honest with you, we got NBA guys, and when you watch an NBA game, you can have the best player in the game, but you never know who can win. Like NBA games are surprising sometimes, so I think you never know what can happen for that too.
If you're sitting home tonight and saying, what about this French team? I point out one thing. France, coming into these games, is seeded or was seeded higher than Canada.
Canada has really captured the imagination of basketball fans here, namely because of the play of guys like Steve Nash and Todd McCullough. Rowan Barrett and Michael Meeks have also been great. Gets ahead to Nash. 2 points, Canada on the board, courtesy Steve Nash. 2 seconds to go. Nash gets to half court, puts the ball up, didn't get it. And a very disappointing first half for Canada. Where is that team that played so well against Yugoslavia? They haven't shown up yet. And welcome back to the Superdome, site of the playoff round action, men's and women's basketball here at Sydney 2000. Second half is rolling.
Canada is down 7. Should he make his free throws, you have a 5-point game. That's 2 possessions, 44 seconds to go. But they've got to get out and get into a trapping situation, get a steal, get another quick basket.
So the door open here for Canada. Nash comes up with it. Working down. Nash will drive. And the ball just slips away from him out of bounds, and France will take possession. Oh, that is a backbreaker.
It's disappointing for Steve. He's accelerating hard and the ball gets away. And remember, he asked for change in basketballs, and maybe he got a brand new ball. They're reputed to be slick in these games. Talking to some players, they said the ball is pumped up to full capacity and a little bit slippery.
Down by 8, Nash puts it up. Canada within 5, but that will do it. Time runs out. And France with the victory over Canada, and they move on to the semifinals. Canada will not have a shot at a medal.
For France, there is a tomorrow, and for this Canadian basketball team, the dream dies here.
For the full CBC Sports oral history on Canada basketball's run at the 2000 Sydney Olympics, head to cbcsports.ca or CBC Sports YouTube channel, where you can also catch up on the rest of the episodes looking back on some incredible Canadian sporting moments.
Simon Whitfield, gold. Prosper Bagliati has just won a gold medal for Canada in the first snowboard race ever. Here comes Bailey, he's got it! 9.84, a world record for Donovan Bailey and a gold medal.
The consensus topic in this year's NBA draft, that's easy, is Victor Wembanyama of France, 7'3" with a pterodactyl wingspan and the agility of a much smaller man. The top American, that's Scoot Henderson, who's putting up 21 points a game for G League Ignite. But the most intriguing draft prospect might be Henderson's teammate, Scarborough native Leonard Miller at 6'11". He's a small forward with a big body, but as a former shooting guard, he still has little man skills. His career has taken him from here to Utah to Fort Erie to the NBA draft, which he entered last year before opting for an apprenticeship in the G League. He earned a spot in the Rising Stars Challenge at All-Star Weekend, so it looks like investing that extra year in his game is paying off.
Of course, at Fort Erie, I took my game to a different level, but I feel like I've always been that guy in terms of like what I can do on the court.
King, stutter step, finds Miller on the pick and roll, hanging, finishing with contact.
Oh my goodness.
Leonard Miller is growing up tonight. Quickly up ahead to Miller, he'll flush it down. Miller, shot clock turned off, clock at 4, shot is up, got it!
I think I could see myself being an all-star, participating in more all-star weekends like I just did this year, but definitely being one of the best in the world. I'd like to see that.
Look, I understand that Olympic basketball entails a different style of play. FIBA hoops are to the NBA what the CFL is to the NFL, or amateur boxing is to professional. Same sport, but a different game, and some qualities get lost in translation. But if we're looking for tangible reasons that Canada's men's team might finally convert its NBA presence into Olympic success, General Manager Rowan Barrett just laid them out for us. Multiple generations of NBA players from north of the border, many of them raised to prioritize national team play. A series of signed 3-year contracts from some of the current elite, which solves the stubborn problem of adding NBA talent to the national team player pool. And as for the switch to FIBA ball, by now everybody knows the rules, the wide lane, and the freedom to dunk the ball as it hovers over the cylinder. Some other differences are more fundamental, but they shouldn't make a difference to top-tier professionals who have grown up playing both versions of the sport. The numbers hint at progress. Canada's senior men are 11-1 in their last 12 games. But those numbers also tell us that the time for moral victories or finding honor in almost qualifying for the Olympics is over. Later this year, Canada will participate in the FIBA Basketball World Cup, where they might play anyone from the USA to the Philippines to Finland to France to Cape Verde. We won't know for sure until after the draw. But one opponent we know they'll face: expectations. Ours, the competition's, their own. If it's added pressure, it's also a privilege, another sign of the program's progress. So let's see if they follow through all the way to Paris 2024.